Welcome to The Nation. I'm Jason Wee. Today we look at one of Malaysia's most debated proposals, the under-16 social media ban. Dr. PREM KUMAR SHANMUGAM is a counseling psychologist and an adjunct professor. He's here to help me do this. Now, Doc, thanks for doing this. Let's get straight into it. I want to talk about the context and rationale behind why Malaysia is doing this. Now, the government has cited cases such as cyberbullying, online sexual abuse, mental health risks as the reason for the ban. Can you tell me what do you think are the most serious or pressing risks that are facing Malaysian youth today and why?
Okay. I think, Jason, is a combination of things. It's not just one particular area which has caused us to consider this ban. And again, talking about ban, maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more later, whether that's the right choice of word to use. But yeah, it's a combination of things because things are getting out of hand with the youth, with the kids nowadays.
Yeah, and what cases do you think that you've dealt with personally that you've seen come through your door that have to do with social media?
Quite a few, and I think I would say the most scary one that we have seen is violence, rage, where a 15, 16-year-old child can physically just stab someone. You know, the recent incident in the newspaper that we heard of, right? And he was not even remorseful about it. So something has taken place in the brain, something very psychological has taken place, where this person went to the extent of stabbing somebody, murdering somebody, and was not remorseful about it, didn't even realize that it was wrong, it was against the law. So that's the extent of how much the brain has been hijacked. Yeah, the rational part of the brain has been hijacked because of some addictive disorder which is stimulating the reward system of the brain. That's a little bit of the science behind it.
I guess before we even go to the ban, I guess many people have asked, is it social media itself or is it something else in the environment that is pushing kids towards this heightened risk that you've been seeing through your door?
Okay, well, I think social media is the big trigger, right? And that's what has pushed people. In fact, I would say going back to during the COVID period, the pandemic period, we have already been seeing a rise in this problem. Post-pandemic, when the lockdown was open and everybody was out, we suddenly started seeing a rise in people seeking treatment for gaming addictions, people seeking treatment for online gambling. And this was a result of the whole lockdown period when they were just glued to the social media and to their laptops and computers. So I would say a big reason for it would be social media, but of course a combination of factors again.
Yeah, obviously people have been pointing to social media, and since that is the topic of our conversation today, let's focus in on the ban. And obviously part of the ban has to do with getting people age verified, meaning we can tell who is 16, who is above 16, and who is below 16. How effective do you think this implementation of age ban would be, or age gating? And do you think there will be possible unintended consequences, especially to do with privacy or stigmatization, especially for youth who, for them, social media has been such an integral part of their identity today?
Well, I believe that prohibition may not be the solution, but we need to find a way to regulate this. This again goes back to all other issues that we have had in the past as well, and I can relate this to addictions with substances also. Prohibition has never been a solution. We have to find ways to regulate it, to find ways to introduce things like harm reduction. And in fact, now the word harm reduction, it's always been so negative. It's harm and reduction, right? Now we have coined something called sustainable recovery, which means the same thing, but it sounds positive. So that's why I feel that the word ban may be a little harsh, and scary. So it's like, oh, you're going to ban me from social media? What am I going to do? How am I going to interact with the world? You're taking something very vital, very important away from them, and from adults also. So we need to find a way to regulate it. One of the things, as you said, 16, we probably need to revisit why 16. Why are we doing this at the age of 16? I would think the reason being 16 is considered the age of maturity. Again, this is from the past. But we know today that youngsters and young adults or kids mature much faster. You get people reaching puberty at the age of 12, 13 even, So the thought processes mature much earlier. So we probably need to do more research and find out whether 16 is right or 13 is right.
Yeah, and a 16-year-old in the city will probably look very different from a 16-year-old in rural areas, right? I guess one thing I want to ask you about is, if the social media ban were to come into place, how do you think kids will respond to this ban? And how do you think they'll be engaging with the online world if it's not social media in this case?
Well, firstly, I think the kids will be very angry. They'll be very upset about a ban. We have heard so many stories where parents or adults trying to control their youngsters from the internet. You switch off the internet and these kids go wild. We've even heard stories of where the kids jump out the window and actually commit suicide because the addiction is so strong. So how would they respond? It would not be the best way. They would not respond in the most accepting manner. There will be retaliation. And I think they will look for other means to get their highs. You know what I mean? To get their attention.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, you spoke about harm reduction, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, with a ban or not, social media alone and regulation around it probably isn't enough to safeguard children online. And probably we need complementary methods, such as parental interventions. What kind of complementary methods or steps do you think we need at this present day to implement broader safeguards to ensure children's safety online?
Okay. I think mainly will be education. Again, I'd like to go back to the example of substance addictions, which we have been battling for years and years. And I would say about more than a decade ago, we started talking a lot about addictions in the community. We started creating public awareness. We started talking about it in the places of faith, places of prayers, temples and mosques. And it helped people to realize that, hey, you know what? This is a disease which needs to be treated. And it took a long time for the public to actually accept it and think, yeah, it's a problem and I need help. So coming back to this as well, digital addiction or banning social media, we need to start with educating the community. We need to start with educating people, the public, and go back to that same thing which worked for us before and implement it again.
Yeah, I guess one bit is that, and whether people see addiction as a problem, especially to social media, is that perhaps a lot of parents and adults are addicted, right? I mean, you and I probably spend some time online. How do you think we're going to approach this conversation on addiction and perhaps changing our relationship with social media? What interventions are really needed in that respect?
Okay.
In that respect?
That also goes back to our cultural ways of how we manage upbringing the children. How many of us actually communicate with children? How many of us actually spend time with our kids? We have kids who cry and then the parents give them the phone. Here you go. Kids who scream for something and then you give them the iPad to make them stop screaming or crying. And what you're doing is actually already conditioning their brain or rather to respond to that stimuli. So the next time they want something, they just cry because they know they're going to get it. So you are starting to condition the brain over and over again. And in fact, this is the same concept that social media uses with things like Facebook and YouTube. They hold the responses, then release it. So you wait to watch these responses, right? In Facebook or social media, what do you call YouTube and all. And there's something called intermittent conditioning that takes place. So your brain is now waiting for that release. You watch it, you get rewarded, you feel good, then you wait again. So you're already conditioning your brain to addiction, to becoming addicted.
Yeah, and it's the chemical reactions to our interface online. I guess then if a social media ban were to really come in place, since we know that it exacerbates depression, anxiety, and so forth, because of the process that you described, do you think the ban can meaningfully reduce the risk alongside the complementary methods that you talked about?
The answer is yes, it will reduce because we don't have a choice. We have to do something really quick. And this is something we can do immediately. But then, like you said, Jason, alongside of this, we need to do all the other things as well. We need to do public awareness. We need to educate the public. We need to explain to them that this is not against your human rights, but this is something to help you, to protect you for getting sucked into the dark side,
And I guess, you've worked across multiple different countries, Malaysia, Singapore, Maldives, and in the Middle East. And obviously, each country has their own cultural context attached to our relationship on social media. For instance, Malaysia is one of the highest social media penetration rates in the world, right? How do you think, is there anything specific about the Malaysian context or unique about our context that we can look at in terms of the risk or effectiveness of such a ban?
Well, like I mentioned earlier about the cultural side of things, Malaysia is a multicultural country, as we all know. So we have different cultures. We are a melting pot now. We have people from around the world coming here, and we are acculturating to different kinds of cultures and different kinds of living. And I think that has pros and cons. Okay, because if you go back to the basis of a family, a father, mother, son, daughter, children, that unity, we may be losing it. That sitting down and having a discussion with my dad or with my mom, it's not as strong as it used to be before. So this influence of multicultural influences is coming here, technology, modernization, it has its pros and cons. I think we need to go back to our basics.
Yeah. But I guess even in the reality, in the age before social media, child truancy or disobeying or going behind parents' backs, these are things that happen already. And one of the, I guess, criticisms behind a social media ban is that we might be pushing children towards going to underground platforms or websites that are even more unregulated because they will find their way around it. How do you think we're going to see, or what really is the landscape if children still want to access social media even after the ban, and they'll find a way to do it?
Well, I think they will find a way to do it because you can't stop them completely. And information is free. It's accessible anywhere in the world. And you can sit down here and you can talk to someone in any part of the world. You can have video call to somebody in any part of the world, right? So how do we manage that? Again, I think is education. We have to just educate the public. We need to tell people this is going to be a problem. It's not as bad as it can be in the next 3 years. And these are the things we need to do in order to reduce the harm. Like I said, harm reduction. I think we need to look at that.
And what would you say, I guess, for parents who are either under-resourced, are working overtime and don't spend a lot of time with their children, who even in the absence of social media find it difficult as it is, how are they going to be managing and responding to this increasing need for education, even with a ban in place?
Children are actually parented by social media today. Children are actually parented by the internet. They're parented by the digital world. Unfortunately, parents, including myself, we are instead of being victims, we're actually culprits of the situation also. We should spend more time. We should actually allocate time specifically for family. A time where when you sit down and have dinner, let's have dinner, but everyone's on the phone, everyone's scrolling on the phone, you know. But we should actually make it a point to phones aside, laptops aside, let's actually have dinner.
Yeah, one story I've heard is that the inventor of the infinity scroll actually regrets inventing it due to its addictive quality, right? And some have also recommended that the social media ban is one thing, but we should also put equal amount of attention on the design of social media. Do you have any thoughts about how social media can be better focused on designs that protect the safety of a child? And what are the pros and cons of, I guess, approaching it in a regulatory ban approach, as well as thinking about the design of the platform?
Probably the algorithms, as we discussed. That's something that I think would help a lot, right? So, for example, someone who is below 16 or 13 or whatever age that we decide at some point, when they have access to the social media, we can have a form of scanning, retina scan or identity, an ID where they can identify their age. And that age-specific algorithm should kick in. So information for that child of that age should only be information that has already been pre-decided to be released to that particular person. And this is one method.
What about the privacy concerns? I mean, many human rights activists or the conversation at the global policy level have really been quite critical of the age verification process, you said, using these technologies. How would you respond to, be it a member of the public or a parent that has concerns about be it the government or be it social media platforms collecting so much data for such a process?
Well, again, there are pros and cons to it, because even as adults or as parents, we have a responsibility to the child as well. And we need to find a way to protect the child. It doesn't have to be my child, but I'm an adult and I'm a responsible adult. I need to find means to protect the child. So, Data Protection Act aside, WHO, the UN standards, but we still have a duty to protect the child. I think that supersedes everything.
So let me put you on the spot, right? Say you have all the power in the world. How would you design our social media landscape today? Just imagine if you were, had control of both platforms and the government. How do we want to think about imagining a better social media and digital landscape for our children? What would it be like for you?
Well, I'll probably think of algorithms that are specific to certain ages, or even certain populations or certain professions for that matter. Students need this. Yeah, you're a student, you're studying, you need to do research. So we need to find a way to give that student that specific exposure or access. Children need different kind of access. So I'd probably want to find an algorithm that can decide what kind of information is going to be released to this person.
Yeah, and I think part of that acknowledges that children still get some form of benefit from social media, right? I mean, so much of education is on YouTube, even just learning really math or science. And I guess with the social media ban, how do you think it's going to affect young people who rely on social media for legitimate needs, be it education, even mental health support, or simple as creative expression, being online and having that space to connect with their communities.
Well, you see, there's a concept called digital dualism, which actually came about because of the digital world, right? And identifying myself with the digital world and identifying myself with the real world. So there needs to be a differentiation. That is what digital dualism initially meant. But today we realize that we actually cannot differentiate the digital world and the real world, because somehow we do identify ourselves with the digital world. We do have a presence, and then again we do have a presence in the real world as well. So we need to find a way to augment this, and in such a way that it's combined, and it's proper. And like I said, it goes back to algorithms, I guess. Yeah,
and Malaysia is really not alone in questioning these things, right? We know that recently Australia is implementing a ban, and we're going to go see it live, come live for the first time. How do you see this shaping the future or our digital experience for Malaysia as a whole, right? Given that other jurisdictions like EU, Australia are experimenting with different policy solutions, how are we responding as a community, be it parents or even at the policy level?
We need to learn from them. We have learned a lot from these countries like Australia and the EU countries, even in the past. Again, going back to the concept of harm reduction, we learned it from them, we implemented it here, and it was successful. It was very successful, some of these concepts. So again, now we have to learn it from them. And I would think learn and then implement by stages. I think a hard ban like this will have different kinds of consequences.
And I guess, if like Australia or the EU, right, tracking safety is a huge feature, be it in the policy or in their frameworks that they implement. What metrics or indicators do you think Malaysians and our Malaysian policymakers should use to track whether or not the under-16 ban, achieves its intended goals of either reducing cyberbullying, improving youth mental health, given that these are very intangible and difficult measures to really evaluate, especially for our children?
Well, the first thing is the usage, time you spend on social media. I think that's the first important thing. As you said earlier, and we are one of the highest in the world for spending the amount of time on social media. So that's one good metrics to look at. How much of time has reduced or has it increased? Is a ban going to reduce or discourage them from using, or would it actually encourage them from using even more? That's one thing that we need to look at. There was an interesting study, I think it was called Project Mercury, which was done some time ago, and it said that the findings were people who stopped using social media for more than a week actually reduced their levels of depression, anxiety, and loneliness. So it worked. Stay away from social media just 1 week.
I guess one of the criticisms or effects of the prevalence of social media is that we've really lost our third spaces, right? Children, I guess back in the day, could go to the playground, had places to hang out in the shopping mall, which still all exist. Do you think there will be a return to physical life or physical experiences given the social media ban? And how do you think parents are going to change their approach to raising kids, especially, come school holiday time when there's so much time to deal with them?
We should encourage kids to go out in the open. In fact, I'm actually encouraging people to go back to books, not just reading on the phone or your iPad, Start actually picking up a book physically and read it. We should probably encourage more activities in the field, outside, from school level. In fact, with the parents also, take your kids out, go play soccer, go play football, play futsal, physical activities, and not depending so much on the social media or digital. We are also culprits of it, adults as well. I am. I can't leave my home without my phone, and I can't leave my phone without a full charge. I'm so dependent on it. What more a young kid who's got no other activity, no other entertainment?
But I guess, if the social media ban does come into place and a child suddenly turns to 16 and suddenly they're now re-exposed into this ecosystem of Instagram, of TikTok and Facebook.
Yes.
How might that be introducing unintended consequences because they're dealing with it at a later age? Or do you think it's going to improve their capacity to deal with it since they had a time to live in a world without social media? What do you think is going to happen in such a very stark dual reality, right? From under 16, where you are kind of excluded from the social media digital world, and then you're 16 all of a sudden and you're in with the adults in the comment sections.
That's dangerous. We would call that a relapse. A full-blown relapse, It's like, the example we like to use is like taking someone who's recovering from alcohol addiction and telling him, hey, go work in the bar as a bartender now. What do you think is going to happen, right? So I guess the answer to that would be, we need to phase this out. Yeah, you can't just have a bang like that and then suddenly say, okay, now you can use it. So it needs to be staged, it needs to be phased in such a way that there is exposure, there is little exposure, there's controlled exposure until the person is ready to take responsibility on his own.
And what would be lessons from your experiences with dealing with addiction from substances, or really managing and supporting families in dealing with this, especially, if you were to tell a parent watching this, what would you say to them, especially in supporting their child transition out from social media?
Normally what I would like to say is that if you feel your child is behaving abnormally, and if you feel your child is isolating, don't doubt there is a problem. There probably is a real problem. Seek help. We now tend to go into denial quite often. Denial is a form of a self-defense mechanism, actually. So we don't accept the reality. We say, oh, he's okay, he's doing this for blah, blah, blah reasons, he'll be all right with time. Don't do that, Take it seriously, seek help if you think your child is doing something different from what a child normally does, Because addictions can happen in isolation, and it's dangerous because with digital addiction, people tend to go into depression very easily. And most of the times you find out when it's too late.
And what resources do you think are there for parents who are supporting their children dealing with this, right? I mean, that's going to be quite extreme if you're spending 3-4 hours on TikTok a day.
Well, there are many centers that offer help now. There are many agencies that offer help. There are quite a number of clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists, or counselors who are trained because the problem is real. So they get trained and they can help you. If you think there's a problem, please reach out. Google, you'll find many places that can help.
Yeah, and I guess for teachers and the larger ecosystem, right? For parents, educators, mental health professionals, how do you think they're going to be supporting the enforcement of this ban? Is it going to be a case where if they know the child is on social media that they're going to report the child? What's the enforcement going to look like then?
So again, I would suggest to the policymakers to actually invite experts, invite teachers, clinicians, industrial experts, get a committee formed and get advice from this committee about how we're going to face or stage this ban or this what do you call harm reduction method. Instead of straight away going to ban, get advice. Because people who work within the community know a lot about how to manage this.
And I guess the last question, last 30 seconds that we have, what are the larger, more broader cultural systemic changes beyond the ban itself that we need to protect youth mental health in this age?
I think depriving is something we need to think of. Okay, so let's say you're going to tell a child, hey, look, you can't use this now, and then the child goes to school and sees others using it, that poor kid is going to feel deprived, and that's going to lead to other kinds of psychological issues like feeling deprived, going into depression and things, self-esteem issues and things like that. So that's something that we need to be prepared for. If it's going to be done, it needs to be done nationwide. And also globally, we need to understand that our kids travel. We all travel.
Yep.
The world has become very small. So how would they feel when they go to another place and everybody's on social media?
Yeah. That's going to be very difficult. Yes. Thank you so much. That's all the time you have, Dr. PREM.
Thank you,
while the debate continues, there is real hope that with the right safeguards and stronger digital education, we can empower our youth to thrive online, not fear it. I'm Jason Wee. This has been The Nation. Thanks for watching. For more on our big stories, go to bernama.com. Bye for now.